The wagon wheel cracked against a hidden boulder, and Willa Foster felt herself thrown sideways before the world exploded into pain. Her left leg caught between splintered wood and unforgiving stone on a dusty trail 5 miles outside Benton, Montana territory, in the summer of 1878. She had been traveling alone, which her father back in St. Louis had warned against. But Willa was 22 years old and determined to reach her brother's homestead before winter made the journey impossible. Now she lay in the dirt, her leg bent at an angle that made her stomach turn. The wagon overturned beside her with supplies scattered across the Montana wilderness like discarded dreams. Her horse had bolted, disappearing over the ridge with the reins trailing behind. The pain came in waves that made her vision blur. Willa tried to stand, managed to get her good leg beneath her, but the moment she put any weight on her left side, white-hot agony shot through her, and she collapsed back to the ground with a cry that echoed across the empty hills. She could see the break beneath her torn skirts, the unnatural swelling already beginning, and knew with terrible certainty that without help she would die out here. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, beating down mercilessly. Willa dragged herself to the overturned wagon's shadow, her broken leg screaming with every inch of movement. She had managed to grab her canteen, which had miraculously survived the crash, but knew the water would not last long in this heat. Her throat was already dry, her lips cracking. By the time she heard the sound of hoofbeats, Willa had almost given up hope. She tried to call out, but her voice emerged as barely more than a croak. The rider came into view, and through her pain-hazed vision, Willa saw a man unlike any she had encountered in her civilized upbringing. He sat atop a massive bay horse, his shoulders impossibly broad beneath a worn leather vest that revealed arms corded with muscle. Long, dark hair fell past his collar, tied back with a strip of rawhide, and a thick beard covered his jaw. He was enormous, built like the mountains that surrounded them, and as he swung down from his saddle with easy grace, Willa found herself both frightened and strangely reassured by his presence. "Jesus," the man muttered, his voice deep as rolling thunder as he took in the scene. His eyes, she noticed as he knelt beside her, were a startling shade of green against his sun-darkened skin. "How long you been out here?" "Since dawn," Willa managed, her voice hoarse. "My horse bolted. I cannot walk." He did not ask unnecessary questions. His hands, surprisingly gentle for their size, moved over her leg with practiced efficiency. When his fingers found the break, Willa could not suppress her gasp of pain. His jaw tightened. "It is broken clean through. Needs to be set proper, but not out here." He looked at her face, seemed to assess something in her expression. "Name's August Malone. Got a cabin about 3 miles north. I can get you there, get this leg dealt with, but the moving is going to hurt like hell. You able to handle that?" Willa nodded, not trusting her voice. August Malone moved with decisive purpose, gathering her scattered supplies and loading them onto his horse with quick efficiency. Then he turned back to her, and before she could protest or prepare herself, he scooped her up as though she weighed nothing at all. The movement jarred her leg and Willa cried out, her hands instinctively grasping his vest. She could feel the solid muscle of his chest, the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. He held her cradled against him, one arm beneath her knees, the other supporting her back, and began walking toward his horse. "Going to put you up first," he said, his breath warm against her hair. "Then I will climb up behind. Try to keep that leg still as you can." Getting onto the horse was agony. Willa bit her lip hard enough to taste blood, determined not to scream, but tears streamed down her face as August carefully positioned her sideways across the saddle. Then he mounted behind her in one fluid motion, his arms coming around her to gather the reins, creating a solid wall of protection at her back. "Got you," he murmured, and somehow those two words made her feel safer than she had since leaving St. Louis. "Lean back. I will not let you fall." The ride to his cabin passed in a blur of pain. Willa drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of August's steady presence, the rumble of his voice when he spoke soothingly, the careful way he guided his horse to avoid the roughest terrain. At some point, she felt him shift her more securely against his chest, one massive arm wrapped completely around her waist while he controlled the horse one-handed. The cabin appeared suddenly, a solid structure of logs nestled against a hillside with a creek running nearby. August dismounted with careful movements, then lifted Willa down with the same surprising gentleness. This time, he carried her straight inside, kicking the door open with his boot. The interior was sparse but clean, a single large room with a fireplace, a table and chairs, a bed in one corner and shelves lined with supplies. August laid her on the bed, then moved immediately to the fireplace, building up the fire with practiced ease. "Going to need hot water," he explained, his back to her as he worked. "And I've got some whiskey. You are going to want it when I set that leg." Willa watched him move around the cabin, this mountain man who had appeared like something from a storybook when she needed saving most desperately. He filled a pot with water from a barrel, set it over the fire, then returned to the bed with a bottle of amber liquid. "Drink," he instructed, helping her sit up enough to swallow. The whiskey burned down her throat, making her cough, but warmth spread through her chest. August made her take several more swallows before he seemed satisfied. "Knew a doctor once down in Colorado," August said, rolling up his sleeves to reveal forearms that looked like they had been carved from granite. "Taught me some things. I have set bones before, but I will not lie to you, Miss Foster, Willa Foster, Miss Foster. This is going to hurt worse than anything you have ever felt. You can scream all you want. Nobody out here to disturb but the eagles." He was not exaggerating. When August cut away her skirt and began to straighten her leg, Willa did scream, her hands twisted in the blanket beneath her, her entire body rigid with agony. She felt the bones shift, heard August's low curse, and then there was a sickening click as he pulled and the broken ends aligned. "There," he said, his voice tight. "Worst is done." Through her tears, Willa watched him work. He splinted her leg with wooden slats he produced from somewhere, binding them firmly with strips of clean cloth. His hands never faltered, never hesitated, though she could see the tension in his shoulders, the grim set of his mouth. When he finished, he pulled a light blanket over her, then stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "Thank you," Willa whispered. August did not turn around. "Get some rest. Leg like that, you will be here a while, 6 weeks at least before you can even think about putting weight on it. 6 weeks. The reality of it crashed over Willa like a wave. 6 weeks trapped in this cabin with a stranger, dependent on his charity, unable to walk or care for herself. She was an educated woman, a teacher by training, accustomed to independence. The thought of such helplessness made her throat tight. But when August finally turned back to her, his expression was not one of imposition or resentment. If anything, he looked almost worried. "You got people expecting you?" he asked. "My brother. He has a homestead near Benton. I was supposed to arrive 3 days from now. I will ride into town tomorrow, send word. Let him know you are safe." August moved to the fireplace, began preparing something in a pan. "You hungry?" Willa realized she was starving. "Yes, please." They ate in relative silence, August having carried her to the table rather than make her eat in bed. He had made a simple stew from dried meat and vegetables, but to Willa, it tasted like the finest meal. She noticed the way he kept glancing at her, as though checking to make sure she had not disappeared or collapsed. "How long have you lived out here?" she asked, more to fill the silence than from real curiosity. 7 years. Came up from Colorado after the mining got too crowded." He wiped his bowl with a piece of bread. "Trap mostly. Beaver, fox, whatever I can sell. Hunt for meat. It is a good life, quiet." "Lonely," Willa said before she could stop herself. August's green eyes met hers, something unreadable in their depths. "Sometimes. But I have had my fill of people, their noise and schemes. Mountains do not lie to you, do not try to take what is yours." There was a story there Willa could tell, something that had driven this powerful man away from civilization. But she did not press. Instead, she asked, "Where will you sleep?" "I have taken your bed. Got blankets. Floor is fine." "I cannot let you sleep on the floor in your own home." August stood, gathering their dishes with movements that seemed too graceful for a man his size. "Miss Foster, you got a broke leg. I will be fine on the floor. Discussion is over." That first night was difficult. The pain in Willa's leg throbbed with her heartbeat, keeping her from any real rest. She heard August moving quietly in the darkness, adding wood to the fire, and once she woke to find him standing beside the bed, checking her splint with careful fingers. "Fever?" she asked sleepily. "No, just making sure the swelling is not getting worse." His hand touched her forehead briefly, cool and reassuring. "Go back to sleep." Morning brought reality into sharper focus. Willa needed to use the privy, which meant she needed August's help. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment as she tried to explain, but he simply nodded and scooped her up without comment. He carried her outside to the small structure behind the cabin, then waited at a discreet distance until she called for him. This became their routine. August would carry her wherever she needed to go, his face never showing anything but patient acceptance. He was surprisingly considerate for a man who claimed to prefer solitude, anticipating her needs before she voiced them, bringing her books from his small collection when he noticed her restlessness. On the third day, he rode into Benton to send word to her brother. He returned in the late afternoon with supplies and news. "Your brother wanted to come get you," August said, unpacking flour and coffee beans. "I told him you should not be moved until that leg starts healing proper. He is worried, but he trusts you are in good hands. Said he will come check on you in 2 weeks." "What else did you tell him?" Willa asked, curious despite herself. "That you are safe, that I have got room and supplies, that you are healing well." August paused, then added, "Also had to turn away 3 different men who wanted to come courting once word got around about you." Willa stared at him. "Courting? I have a broken leg. You are also a single woman of marriageable age in a territory where men outnumber women 5 to 1. Broke leg does not matter to some." His expression darkened. One of them, Ben Cartwright, seemed particularly insistent. "Said a woman in your condition needs a husband to provide for her. I told him you were not receiving visitors." Something warm unfurled in Willa's chest at the protectiveness in August's voice. "Thank you. The last thing I need is fortune hunters pretending my injury makes me desperate. Thought you might feel that way." August smiled then, a real smile that transformed his stern face into something almost boyish. "Besides, they were all idiots. One of them could not even remember your name, kept calling you Wilma." Willa laughed, then winced as the movement jarred her leg. August was beside her instantly, his hand on her shoulder, careful, ribs still sore from the accident a bit, but it felt good to laugh. She looked up at him, this mountain man who had saved her life, and asked nothing in return. "You are very kind, August Malone." He looked uncomfortable with the praise, his cheeks darkening above his beard. "Just doing what is right." As days turned into weeks, Willa found herself watching August with growing fascination. He moved through his daily routines with the confidence of a man completely at home in his environment. She watched him chop wood, his powerful shoulders flexing beneath his shirt, and felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with pain or fever. She watched him cook, surprisingly skilled with spices and techniques that suggested someone had once taught him well. She watched him clean his hunting rifle, read by firelight, and tend to his horse with gentle affection. But mostly, she watched him care for her. Every morning, August would check her splint, his large hands impossibly gentle as he examined the swelling and color of her skin. He would carry her to the table for meals, to the privy when needed, and occasionally outside so she could sit in the sunshine and fresh air. His touch was always respectful, always careful, but Willa found herself longing for it nonetheless. "Tell me about Colorado," she said one evening as they sat by the fire after supper. August had carried her to the rocking chair, claiming it was better for her leg than the hard dining chairs, and now sat across from her mending a tear in his shirt. He did not answer immediately, his needle moving through the fabric with surprising dexterity. Finally, he said, "Not much to tell, went there looking for gold like every other fool. Found some, lost it, found more, met a woman." Willa's heart clenched. What happened to her? "She decided she loved my gold more than she loved me. Took it all and ran off with a card sharp from Denver." His voice was matter of fact, but Willa could hear the old pain beneath. "That is when I learned that mountains are more trustworthy than people. Came north, found this place, been here since." "Not all people are untrustworthy," Willa said softly. August looked up from his mending, those green eyes finding hers across the firelight. "No, I am starting to remember that." The air between them felt charged suddenly, heavy with unspoken things. Willa felt her breath catch, felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. August held her gaze for a long moment, then deliberately looked back down at his mending, but something had shifted. Willa felt it in the way August's hand lingered when he helped her to bed that night, in the softness of his voice when he bid her good night, in the way she caught him watching her the next morning with an expression that made her pulse race. On the 10th day, another visitor arrived. Willa heard the horse before she saw the rider, and August's expression darkened as he looked out the window. "Ben Cartwright," he muttered. "Man does not take no for an answer." August went outside, and Willa could hear raised voices, though she could not make out the words. When August returned 5 minutes later, his jaw was tight with anger. "What did he want?" Willa asked. "Same as before. Seems to think he has got some claim on you since he was the first to express interest." August paced the cabin like a caged mountain lion. "Had the nerve to suggest that I was keeping you here for improper purposes. Said a decent woman would insist on a female chaperone." Willa felt her own anger rise. "My decency is none of his concern." "That is what I told him. Also told him if he sets foot on my property again, he will regret it." August stopped pacing, ran a hand through his long hair. "Sorry. No, it is not my place to turn away your suitors. If you want to receive visitors, I will allow it." "You are not turning away my suitors, August. You are turning away opportunistic strangers. There is a difference." Willa met his eyes firmly. "Besides, even if I were interested in courting, which I am not, Ben Cartwright would be at the bottom of my list." Something like relief crossed August's face. "Good. Man is a snake." 2 days later, another man arrived. This one August seemed to know, greeting him with a handshake and something approaching friendliness. Willa watched from the window as they talked, the stranger gesturing animatedly while August nodded. When August came back inside, he was carrying a bundle wrapped in brown paper. "That was Frank Peterson, runs the general store in Benton. Brought some things he thought you might need." August set the bundle on the table. Also brought news. Seems 2 more men have expressed interest in courting you. Real persistent ones this time. Frank thinks they might try coming out here. Willa unwrapped the bundle to find fabric for a new dress, thread and needle, some ribbons, and a bar of lavender soap. Her eyes stung with unexpected tears at the kindness. That was thoughtful of him. Frank is good people. August moved to the fireplace, began preparing their midday meal. About these other men, though. One is Cyrus Hammond, owns a ranch south of town. Widower with 3 kids. Other is James Fletcher, works at the bank. Both respectable, both financially stable. There was something in August's voice that Willa could not quite identify. Almost like he was forcing himself to be fair, to present these men as viable options despite not wanting to. "Are you trying to marry me off?" she asked, keeping her tone light. August's shoulders tensed. "Just telling you what Frank said. Figured you should know." "August, look at me." When he turned, Willa held his gaze steadily. "I did not come to Montana looking for a husband. I came to teach school and help my brother. The fact that I broke my leg does not change that, and the fact that there are lonely men in Benton does not obligate me to consider them. Even if they are good men, stable men who could provide for you proper, even then." Willa paused, then added quietly, "I am being provided for just fine right now." The tension in August's shoulders eased slightly. He nodded once, then went back to cooking without another word. But Willa noticed the small smile that tugged at his mouth, quickly hidden. That afternoon, as promised, 2 riders appeared on the horizon. August watched them approach with his arms crossed, a formidable barrier blocking his door. Willa, propped in the rocking chair by the window, could hear every word through the open door. "Afternoon," said the first man, middle-aged with graying temples and a prosperous look about him. "Cyrus Hammond, here to call on Miss Foster." "She is not receiving visitors," August said flatly. "Now see here, Malone, a lady has the right to choose her own company. Maybe you should let Miss Foster speak for herself." Willa stood, using the chair back for balance, her splinted leg held carefully off the floor. "I can hear you just fine from here, Mr. Hammond. Mr. Malone is correct. I am not receiving visitors." The younger man, who must be James Fletcher, dismounted. He was handsome in a polished way, his clothes expensive and well-tailored. "Miss Foster, I understand you are in a difficult situation. A broken leg, no family nearby, dependent on the charity of a stranger. I am here to offer you an alternative. I have a fine house in town, a housekeeper who could tend to your needs. You would be under proper female supervision during your recovery." "I am perfectly supervised here," Willa said, her voice sharp. "And Mr. Malone is hardly a stranger anymore. He saved my life." "Be that as it may," Hammond interjected, "the situation is not proper. An unmarried woman living alone with an unmarried man, no chaperone, miles from town. Your reputation, my reputation, is my concern," Willa interrupted. "Not yours, not Mr. Fletcher's, not anyone else's." "Now I appreciate your concern, gentlemen, but I am not interested in courting. Not now, not with you, not with anyone. Please respect that." Fletcher opened his mouth to argue, but August took a deliberate step forward. The movement was not threatening exactly, but it reminded everyone present of his considerable size and strength. "The lady has spoken," August said quietly. "Time for you to leave." They left, though Fletcher looked back over his shoulder with an expression that made Willa uneasy. When August came back inside, he found her still standing by the chair, and his eyes widened. "You should not be up on that leg. I wanted them to see me, to understand that I was making my own choices." Willa swayed slightly, and August was there instantly, lifting her with familiar ease. But instead of carrying her back to the chair, he stood there holding her, his eyes searching her face. "Why?" he asked. "Hammond is rich. Fletcher has position. Either one could give you a comfortable life." "Because I do not want comfortable," Willa said, her hands resting on his shoulders. "I want real. I want honest. I want someone who sees me as more than an opportunity or an obligation." August's arms tightened around her. "What do you want, Willa?" The use of her given name sent warmth flooding through her. She looked at his face, so close to hers, at the strength and gentleness and loneliness she saw there, and knew her answer with complete certainty. "You," she whispered. "I want you." For a moment, August did not move, did not breathe. Then slowly, carefully, he lowered his head and kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she did not, when instead she wound her arms around his neck and kissed him back, something seemed to break loose inside him. The kiss deepened, became hungry, and Willa felt herself responding with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, August pressed his forehead to hers. "I am not what you deserve," he said roughly. "Not educated, not refined. I am just a mountain man, Willa. I live rough, got nothing to offer but this cabin and whatever I can hunt or trap." "You saved my life," Willa said fiercely. "You took me in without hesitation, cared for me without complaint, asked nothing in return. You are gentle and kind and strong and everything I never knew I was looking for. Do not tell me what I deserve, August Malone. Let me decide that for myself." He kissed her again, slower this time, with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. When he finally carried her back to the chair, neither of them mentioned the fact that he held her longer than necessary, or that she did not want him to let go. The next morning, everything felt different. August was up before dawn as usual, but when Willa woke, she found him sitting beside the bed watching her with an expression that made her heart stutter. "Morning," he said softly, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. "How is the leg?" "Better. The swelling has gone down significantly." She caught his hand before he could pull away, threading her fingers through his. "August, about yesterday, no regrets," he said quickly. "Please, I could not bear it if you had regrets." "None, but we should talk about what this means. What happens when my leg heals and I need to go to my brother's homestead? What happens when—" August kissed her, effectively silencing her worries. "We will figure it out, all of it, together. That is what you do when you care about someone, right? You figure things out." Over the following days, they settled into a new rhythm. August still carried her everywhere she needed to go, but now his touch lingered, became openly affectionate. He would kiss her forehead when he set her down, hold her hand while they ate, pull her against his chest while they sat by the fire in the evening. Willa bloomed under his attention, feeling more alive than she ever had in her orderly, predictable life back in St. Louis. "Tell me about teaching," August said one evening, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sunset through the window. "What made you want to do that?" "My mother was a teacher," Willa explained, leaning into his warmth. "She taught me that education is freedom. That the more you know, the more choices you have. When she died, I knew I wanted to continue that work, help other children find their freedom. You will make a good teacher, patient, clear when you explain things. I have noticed that when you tell me about your books." Willa tilted her head to look up at him. "Can you read?" "Some. Enough to get by. Never had much schooling, though. Ma died young. Pa worked us kids hard on the farm. No time for learning letters when there are crops to plant." "I could teach you," Willa offered, "if you wanted." August's arm tightened around her. "I would like that. Would like learning from you." They started lessons the next day. August proved to be a quick student despite his protests about being too old to learn new things. Willa found she loved watching his face as he sounded out words, the concentration that furrowed his brow, the boyish delight when he successfully read an entire sentence. At 25 years old, he had lived a hard life, but there was still capacity for joy in him, for wonder, and Willa treasured every moment she could draw it out. 3 weeks after the accident, August carried Willa outside for her daily fresh air. But instead of setting her in the chair he usually placed on the porch, he kept walking, carrying her toward the creek that ran behind the cabin. "Where are we going?" Willa asked, not protesting. She loved being in his arms. "There is something I want to show you." He carried her along the creek for maybe a quarter-mile, following a narrow path through the pine trees. The sound of rushing water grew louder, and then they emerged into a small clearing where the creek widened into a pool, fed by a waterfall that cascaded over smooth rocks. "August, it is beautiful," Willa breathed. He set her carefully on a flat boulder near the water's edge, positioning her so her broken leg could stretch out comfortably. Then he sat beside her, not quite touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Used to come here when I first moved up here," he said quietly. "When the loneliness got bad, something about the water, the sound of it, made things feel less empty." He turned to look at her, his green eyes intense. "Has not been lonely since you came, just wanted you to know that. Wanted you to see this place because it is special to me and you are too." Willa felt tears prick her eyes. "Take me home," she whispered. August's face fell. "Willa, I am sorry, I did not mean to upset you, no." She touched his face, made him look at her. "I meant take me home to our cabin. And when we get there, I want you to kiss me again. I want you to hold me. I want to fall asleep in your arms tonight, not alone in that bed while you sleep on the floor." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by heat. "Willa, are you sure? Your leg is healing, and I am sure. More sure than I have ever been about anything." August gathered her up reverently, held her against his chest like she was something infinitely precious. He carried her back to the cabin with long, purposeful strides, and when he laid her on the bed, his hands were shaking slightly. "Never done this before," Willa admitted, her cheeks hot. "Never wanted to before, but I want to with you." "Never with someone I cared about," August confessed. "Never with someone who mattered. You matter, Willa, more than anything." They took their time, learning each other slowly, carefully, mindful of her injury but driven by a need that had been building since the moment August first lifted her from that dusty road. Afterwards, August held her close, her head on his chest, his hand stroking through her hair. "Marry me," he said into the darkness. "I know it is fast, know I should probably court you proper, but I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Marry me, Willa, let me take care of you always." "Yes," Willa said without hesitation. "Yes, August, I will marry you." The next morning, August rode into Benton to see the preacher and to inform Willa's brother of their plans. He returned with both men in tow. Robert Foster was 26, tall and lanky with Willa's same dark hair and sharp eyes. He studied August with open assessment while the preacher waited on the porch. "You are the mountain man who has been caring for my sister," Robert said. It was not quite a question. "I am." August met his gaze steadily. "And I am the man who wants to marry her. With your blessing if you will give it, without if you will not. But either way, I am marrying her." Robert looked at Willa, who had insisted on standing for this meeting, balanced on her good leg with one hand braced on the table. "This what you want, Willa?" "More than anything," she said firmly. Robert studied them for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing. But Malone, if you ever hurt her, I would die first," August interrupted. "I swear it." They were married that afternoon. Willa in a simple dress made from the fabric Frank Peterson had sent. August in his cleanest shirt with his hair freshly washed and tied back. The ceremony was brief, conducted in the cabin with Robert and the preacher as witnesses. When August kissed his bride, Willa felt something settle into place deep in her soul, a rightness she had never experienced before. Robert stayed for supper, getting to know his new brother-in-law. By the time he left, the two men had developed a mutual respect, bonding over their shared protectiveness of Willa. "You are welcome at the homestead anytime," Robert said as he prepared to leave. "Both of you. Once Willa's leg heals and you are ready for visitors, Sarah and I would like to have you for supper. She is dying to meet her new sister." After he left, August gathered Willa into his arms, careful of her leg, and carried her to bed. "My wife," he murmured against her hair. "Cannot quite believe you are real sometimes, that you are mine." "Believe it," Willa said, pulling him down for a kiss. "I am yours, August Malone, for the rest of our lives." The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Willa's life. August continued to carry her everywhere, despite her protests that she was perfectly capable of hobbling around on her good leg. He seemed to take genuine pleasure in having an excuse to hold her, and Willa had to admit she enjoyed it too. "You are going to miss this when my leg heals," she teased one morning as he carried her to the breakfast table. "What excuse will you use to carry me then?" August set her down and pressed a kiss to her temple. "Will not need an excuse. Will carry you just because I want to." 6 weeks after the accident, August carefully removed the splint. Willa's leg was thin from disuse, the muscles wasted, but the bone had healed straight and true. When she finally stood on both feet, swaying slightly, August's hands hovered near her waist, ready to catch her if she fell. "How does it feel?" he asked, "weak, stiff, but it does not hurt." Willa took a careful step, then another. "I am walking," August laughed, pure joy in the sound. "Not very well yet." "Rude," Willa said, but she was smiling. She took another few steps, gaining confidence, and then her weakened leg gave out. August caught her before she could fall, sweeping her up into his arms. "Told you," he said, but his eyes were soft. "Going to take time to build the strength back. No rushing it." For the next several weeks, August helped Willa regain the use of her leg. He would walk beside her, holding her hand as she made slow circuits of the cabin. When she grew tired, which happened quickly at first, he would simply pick her up and carry her the rest of the way. Gradually, her endurance improved, the muscle returned until she could walk without limping. But August continued to carry her sometimes anyway, just because he could, just because it made them both happy. In late October, they visited Robert's homestead. It was a modest but well-built house with fields surrounding it, and Sarah Foster turned out to be a warm, welcoming woman with red hair and an easy laugh. She and Willa bonded immediately over their shared experiences of adjusting to frontier life. "I was so worried when Robert told me about your accident," Sarah said as they prepared supper together while the men worked outside. "But I can see August takes good care of you." "He does," Willa agreed, watching through the window as August helped Robert repair a fence. Even at this distance, his strength was evident in the easy way he lifted heavy posts. "He is a good man." Robert says he has never seen August so happy. Says he was always polite when they met in town, but distant, guarded, but now he is different, lighter. Willa smiled. "I am different too. I came to Montana thinking I knew what I wanted. Turned out I had no idea." That night, as they rode back to the cabin, August with one arm around Willa's waist to keep her secure on the saddle, Willa asked, "Are you happy?" "Happier than I thought possible," August said without hesitation. "Why?" "Are you having regrets?" "None. Just wanted to hear you say it." Winter came to Montana with brutal swiftness. The snow started in November, heavy flakes that quickly accumulated, transforming the landscape into something both beautiful and treacherous. August had spent the autumn hunting and preserving meat, stockpiling firewood, ensuring they had everything they would need to survive the long, cold months ahead. Willa had never experienced a winter like this. Back in St. Louis, Winter meant cold rain and occasional snow that melted quickly. Here, the snow piled high against the cabin walls, and the wind howled like a living thing. The temperature dropped until it hurt to breathe outside, until ice formed on the inside of the windows. But inside the cabin, with the fire roaring and August's arms around her, Willa felt safer and warmer than she ever had. They spent the long evenings reading together, August's skills improving rapidly under her tutelage. She taught him more than just letters and words. She shared her favorite stories, discussed ideas and philosophies, and discovered that August had a keen mind beneath his rough exterior. "Never thought about things this way," he said one night, setting down the book of poetry she had been teaching him from. "Never thought I could." "You are brilliant," Willa said firmly. "You just never had the opportunity to develop it. That is what lack of education does. It makes people think they are less than they are." August pulled her closer, his chin resting on top of her head. "That is why you teach, to make sure other kids do not grow up thinking they are less." "Exactly." In December, a blizzard struck that lasted 3 days. The snow fell so thick they could not see the trees beyond the cabin. August refused to let Willa near the door, afraid she would be blown away if she stepped outside. They stayed close to the fire, rationing their wood supply carefully, and waited for the storm to pass. On the third night, Willa woke to find August standing at the window, his expression troubled. "What is wrong?" she asked. "Nothing, go back to sleep." But Willa knew him too well now. She got up, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and joined him at the window. "Tell me," August sighed. "Worried. Snow is still coming down hard. Wood supply is fine, food is fine, but if this keeps up, we could be snowed in for weeks. Just want to make sure you do not regret being stuck here with me." "August." Willa turned him to face her, cupped his bearded face in her hands. "There is nowhere else I would rather be. No one else I would rather be with. Storm or sunshine, winter or summer, I choose you. Every time I choose you." He kissed her deeply, then lifted her and carried her back to bed, holding her close until sleep claimed them both. The blizzard ended the next morning. They woke to a world transformed, the snow glittering like diamonds in the weak winter sunlight. August dug them out, creating a path to the woodpile and the barn where his horse sheltered. Life returned to their quiet routine. Christmas came, and though they had no decorations or special meal planned, August surprised Willa by presenting her with a gift. It was a carved wooden box, beautifully made with intricate patterns on the lid. "Made it for you," he said gruffly. "During the nights when you were sleeping. Thought you could keep your special things in it." Willa opened the box to find he had lined it with soft leather, and inside was a single piece of paper. She unfolded it to find August's handwriting, painstakingly careful. "I love you, Willa Malone." "It is perfect," Willa whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, August, so much." She gave him her gift then, a scarf she had knitted in secret from yarn she had unraveled from an old blanket. It was not perfect, her stitches uneven in places, but August wrapped it around his neck like it was made of gold. "First gift anyone has given me in years," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "First Christmas that has felt like Christmas since my ma died." They celebrated quietly, just the two of them, but it was enough. More than enough. In February, Willa realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a week or two, her body changing in subtle ways, but had wanted to be certain before telling August. When she finally shared the news over breakfast one morning, he dropped his fork. "A baby," he said, his eyes wide. "We are having a baby in September, I think." Willa watched his face carefully, trying to gauge his reaction. August stood abruptly, crossed to her side of the table, and pulled her into his arms. "A baby," he repeated, and this time she heard the wonder in his voice. Our baby. He was impossibly gentle with her after that, as though she might break. Willa finally had to sit him down and explain that pregnancy was natural, not an illness, and she did not need to be coddled. August listened intently, then nodded. "But I still get to carry you when I want," he said. "You still get to carry me when I want," Willa agreed, laughing. Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow began to melt in March, revealing the brown earth beneath. By April, the first flowers were blooming, and by May, the world was green again. Willa's belly began to swell noticeably, and August spent long hours talking to her stomach, telling their unborn child about the mountains and the streams, the animals they would see, the life they would have. In June, Willa received a letter from the school board in Benton. They had heard about her presence in the area and wanted to know if she was still interested in teaching. The position would start in September after the harvest. "What do you want to do?" August asked, reading the letter over her shoulder. "The baby is due in September," Willa said slowly. "I could not start until after, maybe January. But you want to teach." "I do. But I also want to be with our baby, with you." She turned in his arms. "We could move closer to town, make it easier." August was quiet for a long moment. What if we did not move? What if the school came here instead? "What do you mean?" "There are homesteaders out this way, families with kids who cannot make the trip to Benton for school. What if you taught them here? We could add onto the cabin, make a proper schoolroom. Families could board their kids here during the week if the distance was too far for daily travel." Willa felt excitement building. That could work. We would need more space, more supplies, but it could actually work. They spent the summer building. August designed an addition to the cabin that would serve as both a schoolroom and additional living space for when the baby came. Robert came to help, along with several other homesteaders who were enthusiastic about having a school nearby. By the time September arrived, the addition was complete, furnished with desks August had built himself, and a proper chalkboard Frank Peterson had shipped in from back east. But before the school could open, there was the matter of the baby. Willa's labor began on a cool September evening, earlier than expected. August tried to remain calm, but she could see the fear in his eyes. "Go get Sarah," Willa said, breathing through a contraction. "She said she would help when the time came." August was reluctant to leave her, but finally agreed. He rode to Robert's homestead like the devil was chasing him, returning with Sarah and a midwife from town within 2 hours. Then he was banished from the bedroom, left to pace outside while the women worked. The labor was long and difficult. Willa had never known such pain, such exhaustion. But every time she felt like she could not go on, she thought of August waiting outside, thought of the life they had built, and found the strength to continue. Near dawn, a baby's cry filled the cabin. August burst through the door, ignoring Sarah's protests, and was at Willa's side in an instant. She was pale and exhausted, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, but she was smiling. "A son," she whispered. "We have a son, August." The midwife placed the baby in August's arms, and Willa watched her huge, strong mountain man transform into something tender and awestruck. He looked at their son like he was witnessing a miracle. "He is perfect," August breathed. "Willa, he is perfect." They named him William, after Willa's late father, and from the moment of his birth, that baby owned August's heart completely. Willa would wake in the night to find August standing over the cradle, just watching William sleep. Or she would catch him carrying the baby around the cabin, talking softly about everything and nothing, his rough voice gentle. "Never thought I would have this," August confessed one night, William sleeping peacefully against his chest. "A wife I love, a son, a home that feels like more than just shelter. Sometimes I am afraid I will wake up and it will all be gone." "It is real," Willa assured him. "We are real. This is your life now, August, our life, and it is only going to get better." The school opened in January, just as Willa had planned. 6 families sent their children, ranging in age from 6 to 14. Willa taught them reading and writing, mathematics and history, while William slept in a cradle in the corner of the schoolroom. The children were curious and eager, hungry for knowledge, and Willa loved every challenging, rewarding moment. August helped however he could. He built more desks as enrollment grew, hunted to provide meat for the children who boarded during the week, and became something of an assistant teacher, helping the older boys with practical skills like woodworking and tracking. The children adored him. This huge, bearded mountain man who could lift a grown man with one hand but who spoke gently and never raised his voice, who would sit patiently helping a struggling student sound out words, who carved small animals as prizes for good work. They called him Mr. Malone and treated him with a respect that August clearly found both uncomfortable and touching. Years passed. William grew from a baby to a toddler to a curious, adventurous little boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's dark hair. The school thrived, expanding until they had to build a separate building to house it. More families moved to the area, drawn by the presence of education for their children. When William was 3, Willa had another baby, a daughter they named Margaret after August's mother. And 2 years after that, another son, Thomas. August was an attentive, devoted father, teaching his children about the mountains and the animals, about respecting nature and working hard. But he also read to them every night, the skill Willa had taught him now put to use, passing on stories to the next generation. "You are an excellent father," Willa told him one evening, watching from the doorway as August read to their 3 children, all of them piled on his lap. "Had a good example of what not to do," August said quietly. "My pa was hard, cold, wanted to be different, wanted them to know they are loved." "They know," Willa assured him. "They absolutely know." On their 10th wedding anniversary, August took Willa back to the waterfall where he had first told her how much she meant to him. The years had been kind to them both. August was 35 now, his beard touched with gray, but still strong and capable. Willa was 32, her body marked by 3 pregnancies but her spirit still young. 10 years, August said, holding her hand as they sat on the same rock where they had sat a decade ago. "Cannot believe it has been 10 years. Best 10 years of my life," Willa said. "Even that first one with the broken leg." "Especially that first one," August corrected. "Without that broken leg you might have made it to your brother's place, might never have stayed with me, might never have given a mountain man a chance." "Oh, I think I would have found my way to you eventually," Willa said softly. "I think we were always meant to find each other, August. The broken leg just sped things along." He kissed her then, tender and sweet, and Willa felt the same flutter in her stomach that she had felt the first time he kissed her all those years ago. "I love you," August said. "More now than even on our wedding day. Thought that was impossible, but every day with you I find new reasons." "I love you too, my mountain man, my rescuer, my husband, my home." They sat together watching the water cascade over the rocks, the sound of it constant and soothing. After a while, August spoke again. "Remember when I told you mountains do not lie, that they are more trustworthy than people?" "I remember. I was wrong, or at least incomplete. Mountains are constant, that is true, but you are more than that. You are constant and changing all at once. You are adventure and home. You are everything I never knew I needed." Willa leaned into his solid warmth, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You saved my life that day on the road, you know, not just from dying of that broken leg. You saved me from a life that was safe but small. You gave me this instead. love and family and purpose. A real, full life. You saved me too, August said. From loneliness, from bitterness, from believing I was not worth loving. You saw something in me I could not see in myself. They stayed until sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Then August lifted Willa into his arms, just as he had done countless times over the years. I can walk, you know, Willa protested, as she always did. I know, August said, as he always replied. But this is more fun. He carried her back to their home, to their children waiting with a special anniversary supper they had prepared with Sarah's help. And as they celebrated surrounded by the family they had built, the life they had created from a chance encounter on a dusty Montana road, Willa looked at August across the table and saw her future stretching out before them, bright and beautiful and full of love. By the time they reached their 20th anniversary, Benton had grown into a proper town with regular rail service and all the amenities of modern life. But the Malone homestead remained much as it always had been, a haven of peace in the wilderness. Their children were growing up strong and capable. William was 13, already showing signs of his father's height and strength. Margaret was 10, clever and quick, with a love of books that matched her mother's. Thomas was 8, adventurous and fearless, always trying to keep up with his older siblings. The school had expanded again, now serving nearly 40 students. Willa had taken on 2 assistant teachers to help manage the load, young women from back east who had come west, seeking adventure and purpose. August had built them a cottage on the property where they stayed, and had expanded the school building twice. Never imagined this, August said one spring morning, watching children arrive for school, their laughter filling the air. When I first came to this mountain, all I wanted was solitude, peace, to be left alone. Do you regret it? Willa asked, though she knew the answer. The noise and chaos. All these people on your mountain. August pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Not for a second. You were right all those years ago. I was not looking for solitude. I was hiding. From hurt, from disappointment, from the risk of caring. You taught me that the risk was worth it. That opening your heart to people, to life, to love, is scary but necessary. You taught me how to live, Willa, really live. That summer, tragedy struck when a fire started in the school building. August was leading a hunting lesson with some of the older boys when they saw the smoke. They ran back to find the building engulfed, flames consuming years of work in minutes. The assistant teachers and younger children had all gotten out safely, thank God, but the building was a total loss. Willa stood watching it burn, tears streaming down her face, and August wrapped his arms around her from behind. We will rebuild, he said firmly. Better than before, I promise you, Willa, we will rebuild. And they did. The entire community came together, everyone contributing materials or labor or both. This time, they built the school from stone, fireproof and permanent. They added a library, something Willa had always dreamed of, and filled it with books donated from all over the territory. By the time winter came, the new school stood proudly, a testament to what a community could achieve when they worked together. At the dedication ceremony, the mayor of Benton gave a speech praising Willa's dedication to education and August's generosity in donating the land and materials. But August deflected the praise. My wife is the real hero here, he said when called upon to speak. She is the one who saw what this community needed and made it happen. I just carried the heavy things and hit things with hammers. The crowd laughed, but Willa felt her eyes sting with tears. Even after all these years, August's humility, his absolute certainty that she was the better part of their partnership, still moved her. As their children grew into young adults, Willa and August watched with pride as they each found their own paths. William wanted to study law, planning to attend university back east. Margaret wanted to be a teacher like her mother, already helping with the younger students. Thomas talked of becoming a veterinarian, his love of animals taking a scientific turn. "We are getting old," August said one evening, watching William help Thomas with his studies at the kitchen table while Margaret read by the fire. "They will leave soon, start their own lives." "Does that frighten you?" Willa asked. "Yes and no. Yes, because I will miss having them here. No, because we raised them right. They are ready." He turned to look at her, his green eyes still as bright as the day they met. "And no, because it means I get you all to myself again. Been looking forward to that, if I am honest." Willa laughed. "You say that like we have not had plenty of time alone over the years." "Never enough time with you," August said seriously. "Could have 1,000 years and it would not be enough." On a cool October morning in 1903, Willa woke to find August already up, sitting in his chair by the window, watching the sun rise over the mountains. She joined him, moving more slowly now at 47, her joints stiff from the cold. "Been thinking," August said as she settled into the chair beside his. 25 years since that wagon wheel broke. 25 years since I found you on that road." "Best thing that ever happened to me, that broken leg," Willa said. "Best thing that ever happened to both of us." August reached for her hand, his grip still strong despite his 50 years. "You know what I remember most about that day?" "What?" "How scared I was. Not of the injury itself, but of how much I wanted to make you safe. How immediately I wanted to protect you, care for you. Thought it was just the circumstances, you know. Pretty woman in distress, natural male instinct to help. But it was more than that. I fell in love with you the moment I lifted you into my arms, Willa. Took me a while to realize it, but it is true. I fell in love with you the moment you told me your name," Willa confessed. "August Malone. It sounded like strength to me, like safety, and you have been both those things every day since." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the day begin. The school would open in an hour. Their children would wake and need breakfast. Life would continue in its busy, beautiful way. But for this moment, they were simply August and Willa, the mountain man and the woman with the broken leg who had found each other against all odds and built a life beyond either of their imaginings. "Want to know a secret?" August asked. "Always. I still love carrying you. Even though you can walk just fine, even though we are both getting older and I probably should not be lifting heavy things anymore, still love it. Makes me feel like that young man who found his purpose on a dusty road." Willa smiled. "Then carry me, August Malone. Carry me for as long as you are able, and when you cannot anymore, I will hold your hand and we will walk together. Either way, we will keep moving forward, together, always together." August lifted her from her chair with only slightly less ease than he had 25 years ago, and carried her to the kitchen to start breakfast for their family. And as Willa rested her head against his solid shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, she sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for broken wagon wheels, for mountain men with gentle hearts, for second chances and unlikely love stories. Their life together continued rich and full for many more years. They saw all three of their children married, William to a sharp lawyer from Denver, Margaret to a fellow teacher who came to help at the school, Thomas to a rancher's daughter with a gift for healing animals. They welcomed grandchildren into the world, 8 in total, and August proved to be as devoted a grandfather as he had been a father. The school continued to thrive under Willa's direction, even after she officially retired and handed the day-to-day operations to Margaret. She and August spent their later years traveling sometimes, seeing the country that had changed so much since they were young, but always returning to their mountain, their home, the place where their love story had begun. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the town of Benton threw them a celebration. Hundreds of people attended, former students and their families, coming from all over to honor the woman who had taught them and the man who had supported her every step of the way. The testimonials went on for hours, stories of lives changed, futures made possible, all because a young woman broke her leg and a lonely mountain man decided to help her. When it was August's turn to speak, he stood slowly, now 75 years old with silver hair and weathered skin, but still tall, still strong in the ways that mattered. He looked at Willa, seated beside him, 72 and beautiful in his eyes as she had been at 22. "I was not supposed to go down that road that day," August said, his voice still deep and carrying despite his age. "I was heading north to check my traps, but something made me go east instead. Call it God, call it fate, call it luck. Whatever it was, I am grateful. Because that choice brought me to Willa, and Willa brought me back to life. She taught me to read, to love, to be part of a community. She gave me children and grandchildren and a purpose beyond survival. She turned a lonely mountain man into someone who mattered, who belonged. So on this, our 50th anniversary, I want everyone to know, Willa Foster Malone is the best thing that ever happened to me, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat." There was not a dry eye in the room. Willa stood, her movements still graceful despite her age, and took August's hand. "And you, August Malone, are my hero, my protector, my partner, my love. You carried me when I could not walk, supported me in every dream, stood beside me through every challenge. You are the strongest man I have ever known, not because of your muscles, though those certainly did not hurt," she paused for the laughter, "but because of your heart, because you chose kindness when you could have chosen bitterness, because you chose love when you could have chosen isolation, because you chose us every single day for 50 years. I love you. I will always love you." They kissed to thunderous applause, and in that moment, surrounded by the life they had built, the family they had raised, the community they had helped create, both August and Willa knew complete happiness. They had several more good years together after that. Years of quiet mornings watching the sunrise, of evenings surrounded by family, of simple contentment in each other's company. August's health began to decline in his 78th year, his strong body finally giving in to the decades of hard living and manual labor. But his mind stayed sharp, and his love for Willa never wavered. On a spring morning with wildflowers blooming across the mountain meadows and sunlight streaming through the cabin windows, August passed away peacefully in his sleep, Willa's hand clasped in his. He was 79 years old, and he had lived a full, rich life, beyond anything he had imagined in those lonely years before Willa came into his world. Willa mourned him deeply, as did their children and grandchildren, as did the entire community that had benefited from his quiet generosity over the years. They buried him on the mountain he loved, with a view of the waterfall where he had first told Willa how much she meant to him. After August's death, Willa continued living in their cabin for 2 more years. She would sit in her rocking chair, the one August had carried her to countless times during those early days of her recovery, and remember. She would walk to his grave and tell him about the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about the school, about everything he was missing. But mostly, she would remember the feel of his arms around her, the sound of his voice, the way he had looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The way he had carried her, not just physically during those weeks when her leg was broken, but emotionally and spiritually throughout their entire life together. Willa passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 76, and they buried her beside August on the mountain. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered to remember them, to tell stories of the love that had shaped all their lives. The mountain man and the woman with the broken leg who had found each other and built something beautiful together. The school they had founded continued for another 50 years, educating generations of Montana children before eventually consolidating with the larger Benton school system. But a plaque remained on the original stone building, commemorating August and Willa Malone and their dedication to the community. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when the mist rises from the mountain streams and the sun paints the peaks in gold, people swear they can see two figures walking together on the trails, a tall, broad-shouldered man and a slender woman, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, still together, still in love, still walking the mountains they called home. Because some love stories do not end with death. Some loves are so strong, so pure, so true that they transcend the boundaries of life itself. And the love between August Malone and Willa Foster, born from a broken wagon wheel and a chance encounter on a dusty Montana road, was exactly that kind of love. It was a love that healed and strengthened, that built and created, that endured through hardship and celebrated in joy. It was a love that started when a mountain man carried a woman with a broken leg to safety, and continued as they carried each other through life, through parenthood, through building a community, through aging and loss, and ultimately through death itself. It was, quite simply, the kind of love that only comes along once in a lifetime if you are lucky. The kind of love that makes you believe in destiny, in soulmates, in the power of two people to change not just each other's lives, but the lives of everyone around them. And it all started with a broken leg, a mountain man with a gentle heart, and a woman brave enough to see past his rough exterior to the beautiful soul beneath. It started with August choosing to carry Willa when she was tired, when she was hurt, when she needed him. And it continued with both of them choosing to carry each other, in all the ways that mattered, for the rest of their lives together.